Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here in beautiful Minden. I always enjoy driving up through these parts of Ontario. It's absolutely beautiful at this time. It's beautiful anytime, actually. And it's so nice to get away from Queen's Park. I call it the bubble. And I'm glad to be joined by our Finance Minister, Rod Phillips, our local champion and Infrastructure Minister, Laurie Scott, and Treasury Board President, Peter Bethlenfalvy. And I have to give a great shout out to the local mayors. Minden Hills Mayor Brent Devolin and Kawartha Lakes Mayor Andy Letham. Mayors, you're doing an incredible job representing your communities. Today, we're here to start laying the foundation for Ontario's long-term economic recovery. This pandemic has shown us the importance of access to high-speed internet and reliable cell service, access that so many of us take for granted. From allowing people to stay home and work remotely, to connecting businesses with their customers, from helping students learn from home, to staying connected to those we love. Reliable, high-speed internet is no longer a luxury. It is necessary for everyday life. It allows people to bank, shop, learn to get their news, or watch their favorite movies. And we take that for granted until we hear stories like from Elaine Coles, who lives 40 minutes from here in Dorset, Ontario. She's 70 years old and she's traveled the world. And yet, when she wants to talk to her grandchildren in Chicago, she's lucky to get 1 bar of service on her cell phone. She says she had a better cell reception as a tourist in the Serengeti Desert, believe it or not, in Africa. She had 5 bars of service there. Even with all our modern advances, there are still 12% of Ontarians who still don't have access to high-speed internet. That's over 1.4 million people. Before the crisis, I made it my personal mission as Premier to improve broadband and connect these communities, and to make sure no part of Ontario was left behind in the 21st century. That's why today, I'm very proud to announce our government is making a historic investment of nearly $1 billion to build better broadband across the province. We're investing over $680 million in the upcoming 2020 Ontario budget. And this funding is in addition to our initial commitment to invest $315 million over 5 years in shovel-ready broadband projects. It will help communities like Minden and Kawartha Lakes get access to the internet and cell service we all rely on. For communities like Minden, better broadband can make a world of difference. It means more economic development, more chances to grow a business, more opportunities for young people. And we will continue to grow and expand these investments with our telecom and municipal partners and make every dollar count. With partners like the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, or EORN for short, that have incredible track records. EORN has laid down 5,500 kilometers of fiber optic cable. They're bringing wireless access to almost 90% of homes and businesses in Eastern Ontario. Those are the kind of results we invest in. Those are the kind of shovel-ready projects we want. Projects that will create jobs, improve quality of life, and bring massive benefits to these communities. So thank you, Mayors Letham and Devolin. Your leadership and support is unbelievable for EORN. My friends, this is just the beginning. Tomorrow, when we release our 2020 budget, we will deliver a plan to protect, support, and recover our province. A plan to get our economy firing on all cylinders once again, while keeping people safe and healthy. Today, we take another step down that road, a road to a stronger, more prosperous, and more connected province for everyone. Thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario. Now I'll hand it over to Minister Phillips.
Thank you very much, Premier, and thank you, Mayor Letham and Devolin, for welcoming us. I'm pleased to be here with my colleague, the President of the Treasury Board, Peter Bethlenfalvy, and particularly here in her own riding with Minister Laurie Scott. Laurie has been such a champion of this initiative, and I'm so pleased to be here today with the Premier to announce it. Tomorrow, I'll announce the next phase of Ontario's action plan. It will be a 3-year budget that will build on our government's response to COVID-19. Most importantly, we will make available every necessary resource to continue to protect people's health, and it will expand on the support our government has provided to those still facing financial hardship due to the pandemic, including families, workers, vulnerable people, seniors, and employers. The plan will have 3 pillars, and as we announced Monday, the first pillar is protect, making good on Premier Ford's commitment to do whatever it takes to get the people of Ontario through the pandemic. The second pillar is support, because we know COVID-19 has brought severe challenges and economic difficulties to families and employers. And the third pillar is recover, because as COVID-19 continues to cause uncertainty in the global economy, we need to position Ontario for a strong recovery, even while being focused on the urgent needs of today. One of the greatest frustrations during COVID-19 has been the lack of reliable, high-speed internet and cell service for too many households in Ontario, due to the lack of adequate broadband infrastructure. This isn't some abstract first world problem. These days, a lack of reliable internet can make it almost impossible to earn a living, get an education, see your doctor, or stay in touch with loved ones. Which is why this important step towards achieving our vision of having every home, business, and farm in Ontario connected by broadband is such a significant part of our Recover pillar. Our historic investment of almost $1 billion to improve broadband and cellular access will provide so many more people with better ways to connect, to work, to learn, and to stay in touch during these unprecedented times and beyond. As we all deal with the day-to-day impacts of COVID-19, it may seem ambitious to start talking about recovery. But someday, hopefully soon, COVID-19 will fade. And then every government in the world will be focused on recovering from the economic crisis caused by this pandemic. For Ontario to recover, we need strong, sustained economic growth. We cannot expect our economy just to bounce back or for the lost jobs to return on their own. We need to start the work of recovery now. There are long-standing structural barriers that we all know that without action will stand in the way, and that includes the lack of reliable internet in many communities. So tomorrow's budget will begin to remove the biggest barriers to growth for communities across the province. One thing that we've all learned from this global pandemic is the value of humility. Being confident enough to admit what we don't know, but bold enough to learn from our collective experience. So while Ontario's 2020 budget will look confidently to the future, it will not presume that any of us have all the answers. Ontario's 2020 budget was prepared recognizing this historic era of uncertainty we're experiencing, and it will capitalize on one of our great strengths, our stability, to send a message of confidence to the people of Ontario, the rest of Canada, and the entire world. Thank you, and I'll hand it over to Minister Scott.
Well, thank you, Minister Phillips, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Minden, Ontario, located in my riding of Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock. Today is a watershed moment for broadband. In June, when the Premier and I committed $150 million for Ontario's broadband program we call Improving Connectivity for Ontario, or ICON, I said then, was this enough? No. Will we do more? Yes. And today we are doing more. An additional $680 million more. Thank you, Premier Ford. And this includes the doubling of our ICON program, adding an additional $150 million, bringing ICON funding to $300 million. This adds to the $315 million that Ontario has invested in the past year. We've invested, as I said, $150 million for ICON, $71 million in SWIFT, the Southwestern Ontario Broadband Network, $63 million for the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, or EORN, filling the cell gaps and dead zones in Eastern Ontario, and $30 million for the Matawa project connecting 6 First Nations in Northern Ontario. And now today, $680 million more for broadband, totaling close to $1 billion for broadband that will improve people's lives, public health and economic development to unserved and underserved communities like Haliburton County. We're hopeful that the federal government will release its Universal Broadband Fund. Ontario has stepped up and is putting $1 billion on the table. Ontario isn't waiting any longer. That is why we are taking action today. As the Premier has said, There is no more important infrastructure project than broadband. Thank you, and now I'll pass it over to Minister Bethlenfalvy.
Well, thank you, Minister Scott, and it's great to be here, as always, with Premier Ford and Minister Phillips, but a special privilege to be here with the mayors, Letham and Devolin, and so appreciate the opportunity to be here. And what a great day for communities across Ontario. You know, as the President of the Treasury Board and Minister responsible for digital and data transformation, part of my role throughout the pandemic is transforming how we provide services to the people of this great province. For instance, just yesterday we announced an enhanced COVID-19 data visualization platform, basically a dashboard, with new and interactive features, so families and businesses can make informed decisions and stay safe and healthy. Last month, Premier Ford and I announced Ontario's COVID-19 action plan for a people-focused government to make vital programs and services more convenient, more reliable, and more accessible. An important part of this plan is bringing more services online. But to do that, we must ensure that all communities have connectivity they can depend on. That's why today's announcement is so important. Our government's commitment to expand and improve broadband service will help connect communities across our province and ensure they have the same access to online services that many Ontarians already enjoy. De par son engagement à élargir et améliorer les services à large bande, notre gouvernement aidera les collectivités partout dans notre province à se connecter et leur garantir à le même accès aux services en ligne auxquels bon nombre d'entre nous sommes déjà habitués. Practically speaking, this means a parent could schedule a doctor's appointment for their child from home. A bricks and mortar business could provide e-commerce solutions to sell their products and services online. Or an Indigenous student in a remote community could access online learning resources. We're committed to building a government that puts the people at the center of everything we do, because we cannot afford to be an offline government in an online world. Thank you. I'll now invite to the podium the Mayor of Kawartha Lakes, Andy Letham.
Good afternoon. Truly an exciting day. Thank you to the Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Infrastructure for inviting me to speak today. My name is Andy Letham, and I am the Mayor of the City of Kawartha Lakes and a board member of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. I am also the chair of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, which created the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, or EORN, to help improve connectivity in Eastern Ontario. In the 21st century, connectivity is no longer a luxury. It is a necessity. It is a social, cultural, and economic lifeline for students, families, businesses, and seniors in communities across the province. The COVID-19 pandemic has only highlighted this need. Members of the AMO and the Rural Ontario Municipal Association have been calling for investments in broadband infrastructure, particularly now as we try to recover from COVID-19 and strive for long-term progress. Today's exciting announcement by the Province of Ontario, on top of previous investments in connectivity, are welcome and much appreciated. It will help connect more homes and businesses in Ontario communities, increase their economic competitiveness, and improve the quality of life for residents and businesses. On behalf of municipal governments across the province, thank you very much to Premier Ford, Minister Scott, and other Ontario Cabinet Ministers for your leadership on this file. These commitments will help our province build a stronger economy for the future, and municipal governments remain committed to working in partnership for stronger communities. It is now my pleasure to invite to the podium the Mayor of Minden Hills, Brent Devolin.
Good afternoon. As the Mayor of Minden Hills and as a member of the EORN Board of Directors, I'd like to extend my appreciation to Premier Ford, Minister Scott, Phillips, and Bethlenfalvy for being here today and announcing the additional funding to support connectivity expansion in Ontario. 2020 has been a year like no other. COVID-19 has highlighted the necessity for access to reliable, high-speed internet services for all Ontarians. Just as the construction of the railroad brought people together, spurring economic growth across the country, building broadband networks that allow residents and businesses to connect with each other and the world will help our communities here and across the province flourish. EORN has been fortunate to work with the provincial and federal governments on joint connectivity projects, including the current Cell Gap project. When this project is completed, it will ensure that no matter where people live, work, and travel on major roadways, that they can use their mobile devices to make a call or connect to do important business. We know that this is just one component of a connected region and more needs to be done. EORN looks forward to continuing to work with the Government of Ontario to help our communities. In closing, I would like to thank you, Premier Ford, and your government for your leadership and vision on these matters. Thank you.
We'll go to the phone line for questions. First question, please.
First question comes from Max Christie at Flamborough Review. Please go ahead.
Hi, Max.
Hi, are there specific projects or areas that are in mind for this funding?
Yeah, I'm going to pass that over to the Minister of Infrastructure. Thanks.
Well, thank you for the question. And we're rolling out more connectivity for all the province of Ontario. And I know, as been mentioned, we're now in the territory of EORN here today in Minden Hills, but we've worked all across the province. And this is the start of many conversations with not only municipalities, but of course with the telecommunications providers. We are all in this together, and there are great ideas that have been generated in the programs that we've rolled out under the first $315 million. And we certainly are going to be looking forward to now the $1 billion that we have on the table and getting the federal government to come with us. When more money is applied, more people at the table, we're able to roll out more projects faster. And I may, if I could, ask the Mayor of Minden Hills, Brent Devolin, to comment on the work that EORN has been doing and, of course, have been asking for more work to be done. So I'll ask Mayor Devolin to come forward.
And thank you, Minister Scott. Certainly, announcements like today make it possible for us to move forward with connectivity. At this time, we're working on the Cell Gap project in Eastern Ontario, but no connectivity solution is going to be covered in one project or one government announcement. Certainly, these announcements make it possible for us to move towards connectivity for all. And speaking as a member of the board as EORN, we have a gig project that we fully developed a business plan and are ready to go when the commitment from provincial and federal governments make this possible. And I'm hopeful that this announcement by Premier Ford and his cabinet ministers and caucus today will be a piece of or part of a solution moving forward so that EORN can get on with the next project that will make this happen sooner for Eastern Ontario. And having said that, this is a business plan that I think is replicable. And not only can this happen in Eastern Ontario, but those that are in the north, in parts of rural southwestern Ontario, that they could see the benefits of this as well.
Follow up?
Yes. With the, I guess, the importance of broadband in numerous industries, but particularly farming, will there be funding or projects that are prioritized by sector?
Again, I'll pass it over to the Infrastructure Minister.
Well, there's no question the agriculture sector has been making this a priority, as well as the municipalities, for many years, and that's where we see the economic stimulus coming forward that is going to allow our rural communities to step into the 21st century. So this is exciting. I mean, we have constant conversations with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture and all the different agriculture sector groups. And I know that Mr. Phillips and Minister Bethlenfalvy and, of course, the Premier have been an incredible champion for us to move these connectivity projects further, faster, and with the biggest commitment in Ontario's history of $1 billion. When I say we have other partners out there, we do. And if the federal government will come forward with their universal broadband plan, that lets us encompass as a large part of Ontario that we need to. And so I think there's a lot of willing partners, and we are going to build it as fast as we can.
Next question.
Next question comes from Matthew Bingley at Global News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Matthew.
Hi, good afternoon. Premier, I'm just hearing from medical experts who are saying the thresholds unveiled in your framework yesterday for the red zone are set too high with percent positivity, and some saying that even going into that red zone would inevitably lead to lockdowns because it would be too late at that point to rein in those cases with those restrictions. Are you willing to reduce those thresholds to try and alleviate some of those concerns?
Well, I'm not too sure if they mentioned or if they actually read the whole plan. It's about early intervention to avoid getting to the red zone. That's what this is about. And the way I can compare it, you see smoke, you go in there and you put the fire out, compared to waiting until there's a big inferno and everyone's running around trying to react. So I think this is a good plan. It's unprecedented when it comes to transparency. And we'll take everyone's advice, but this is about early detection, early prevention, and then we can act. So we've heightened it up on one side and gave them a little more flexibility on the other.
Follow-up?
And just on the testing, you're calling for 100,000 tests by the end of December. The past several days, we've been below 30,000 tests per day, and been below 50,000 for even longer than that. How can you commit to 100,000 tests a day and is it time to change up your tactics on testing?
Well, outside of knocking on every door and dragging people to get tested, our capacity is up to 50,000 right now. We have the antigen test coming in as we speak right now as well. So there's a lot of other tests coming on board, but folks, if you're showing symptoms, please go get tested. We have enough testing areas right across the province, no matter if it's a pharmacies or testing areas that you can drive through, pop-up tents. I was at a pop-up tent over the weekend with Mayor Tory. So I should say pop-up locations, not pop-up tents. But we can't force people to get tested. So we're ready, we're geared up, and there is no backlog. So folks, if you're showing symptoms, please come in and get tested.
Next question.
Next question comes from Luke Hendry at The Intelligencer. Please go ahead.
Hi, Luke. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, everyone. In terms of technology for the internet projects, is there any particular kind of technology that you want to see developed here, whether it be fiber optic cable, wireless, or satellite? And is there a completion time you want these finished by?
Yeah, Luke, that's a great question. We've discussed all areas. I'm going to pass it over to our expert, Minister of Infrastructure.
Well, thank you, Premier. You're right. There is a lot of technology ideas out there. There's some being implemented, some being tested. This is fiber optic. This is more towers. This is Wi-Fi builds. This is satellites. We're looking at everything. So that's the great part of the partnerships that existed with EORN and Southwestern Ontario's SWIFT project. I mean, those builds are happening now. There's thousands of homes being hooked up right now in Southwestern Ontario. We know of satellite companies that there are some pilot projects going on, and that's going to be very critical for Northern Ontario and our remote areas, is how to link those communities up. So innovation is on the table. Conversations are evolving, and they will evolve. I'm very passionate and aggressive about this topic and the difference that it makes in people's lives, especially right now. So there is many conversations with many telecommunications, satellite companies, and of course our regional networks and our smaller internet service providers also. So everybody is going to be part of the solution.
Follow-up?
Thanks for that. And as far as Eastern Ontario goes, I understand you've got conversations that are underway. But does it seem whether their cell gap project or their gigabyte project to bring fiber optic to as many in the region as possible. Are those more suited to the funding you're rolling out today? Is there anything that we could see prioritized?
Well, whoever, we're taking requests for proposals in as we speak on our first stage of the ICON program, which serves unserved and underserved communities. In those projects, we've seen a combination of big service providers, small service providers working together in some cases and with the municipalities. So as communities are ready with the ICON program, we did the first intake, and I can tell you that there was hundreds of applications that came in. Obviously too many for our initial stage. That's why we doubled the ICON project to $300 million, which will leverage on its own close to $1 billion in investment. So this is a partnership that we're dealing with, and I think that I've been quite clear for the past year, and I know the Premier has, that we are ready and committed to do the investment, and people have been making the plans on how to do that in their specific areas. And Eorn is a very good example that have been doing this for over a decade, servicing Eastern Ontario, and the cell gap is money that we've already approved along with the federal government and the municipalities, and that's rolling out very soon. And they do have other projects, as you've heard, the Gigabyte project that has come forward, and we're looking at everyone's applications.
Next question.
Next question comes from Ashley Legasic at News Talk 1010. Please go ahead.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Premier. I just wanted to kind of jump off of Matt Bingley's second question. So the province says it has capacity for 50,000 tests a day, but right now there are 33,000 people in this province waiting for results, and that's with only reaching just over half of our 50,000 goal. How would we reach 100,000 tests a day without incurring a massive backlog?
Well, it's typical. We say anywhere from 25 to 30 because it's roughly about a day behind once we get the results, but that's our capacity at 50,000. We've caught up on the backlog, the prior backlog that was quite high, and we're just waiting for people to come in. So if people again have symptoms, Ashley, by all means come in. We don't see the lineups anymore. We have enough testing kits, so by all means, folks, come on in and get tested.
Follow-up?
Thank you. And just returning to the new framework that was released yesterday, a lot of business owners that we have heard from called this confusing. Some pundits we've spoken to say it's too late in the game to be introducing a whole new framework, and some health experts say that this could lead to wider community spread of the virus. So I understand you've been trying to reach kind of a happy medium here between health precautions and a healthy economy, but with all this feedback, do you think this new system has missed the mark at all?
I don't think so. We consulted with so many stakeholders, and I've always said it's easy to sit back and be a pundit or an armchair quarterback, and sometimes no matter what you do, there's always going to be a group that can sit back and point things out. But we've been very, very transparent with this, and it's as I say, it's unprecedented transparency. So what I'm seeing, you're basically almost seeing it in live time, and if there's suggestions, we never close the door on suggestions. We're always open, and we try to consult with as many people as possible, no matter if it's a small business owners or the medical table, the health table, I should say, other public health units around the province. Everyone had their input on it, and I think they did an extremely good job. It's really simplifies things. And again, this is about preventing areas going into the red zone. But in saying all this, there's only so much government can do. We need the continued support from the people of Ontario that they've shown ever since the beginning of this pandemic. So we have to follow the guidelines and protocols, and well, we're doing a lot better than everywhere else in the world, and especially places here in Canada, to the exception of the eastern provinces.
Last question.
Last question comes from Randy Rath at CHCH-TV.
How you doing, Randy?
Go ahead.
Hi, Premier.
Hi.
Yesterday's opening of the economy was based not just on health considerations, but also on the health of the economic welfare of the employees and the businesses that you open up. How much was the province's fiscal situation considered in that opening? Clearly, we would have decreased revenues, and do we need to increase those revenues by having more business open in the province so we can avoid spending cuts and program cuts and taking on further debt?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, Randy. We're doing everything we can, and before I pass to the finance minister, he's worked day in and day out with so many stakeholders. This is going to be a great budget that he's going to bring forward tomorrow. It's going to be focused in a lot of areas, but specifically making sure that we protect the people of Ontario on health and safety. So I'll pass it over to the minister.
Thank you, Premier, and thank you, Randy. This government has made unprecedented investments in protecting Ontarians, and that is to keep the Premier's promise, which is that we would do what it would take, we would spend what it took to make sure that we protected Ontarians. That involves over $8 billion of additional spending just on healthcare alone. And as the Premier said, we'll outline that tomorrow. But, you know, Randy, it is about a balance. I think the Premier and frankly Dr. Williams talked very eloquently yesterday about the need to balance, the need to understand what the different determinants of health are, and to understand what sort of actions we need to take, yes, to fight COVID, to make sure we're protecting people, but also to make sure mental health is protected as well. So health has always been at the forefront of what we've done, quite frankly, and I've said this before, and you'll recall this, that the right health strategy is also the right economic strategy. We are in a position to pay for what is necessary because of the prudent way that this government managed the province's finances before COVID. And so we will be in a position to continue to do that. Obviously, we'd all like to see the economy come back, but we also know, and we have to be realistic, we are going to be with COVID for a while, and that is going to put a damper on the economy. So the budget tomorrow will lay out how the province of Ontario will maintain the supports it needs, have all of the resources that are required, but also start to recover our economy, because that's finally what we'd all like to see.
Follow up?
Clearly, we just can't keep spending forever. Are there going to be measures in the budget tomorrow to try to increase revenues, even small things like further breaking down restrictions on beverage alcohol sales, that sort of thing?
Well, it's three key pillars: is protect, support, and recover. Protect the health of the people, support businesses and people, and then economic recovery, as the minister mentioned. But there's so many other areas that we can look at new revenues or savings. As Minister Bethlenfalvy is knee deep into it, it's about procurement that we're looking at saving anywhere from $1 to $2 billion a year and just purchasing things more efficiently. And that's compounded year after year. That's just one example. But again, I'll hand it over to the architect of the budget.
Thank you, Randy. And yes, you'll have to wait for the lockup tomorrow to see what's specifically in the budget. But I can assure you and Ontarians there are no new taxes, no new charges. We don't think that now is the right time to put any additional pressure or expenditures, whether that's on individuals or on businesses. So we've prudently managed our finances. We are working, obviously, to make sure that we are running government efficiently. And as the Premier mentioned, Minister Bethlenfalvy is leading part of that approach around important things like the procurement and other items. But right now, the focus is on making sure that all the resources are available to protect and to make sure we're supporting Ontarians and their communities. Now, when it comes to recovery, of course, that's going to be a very important discussion as well. And as I said today, there'll come a time when every government in the world is looking at how they're going to recover from the economic impacts, the recession that has been caused by this pandemic globally. And we are going to be getting ahead of that. We need to be making sure we're dealing with the structural challenges that will get in the way of that. And quite frankly, we're getting in the way of Ontario's potential even before the pandemic. So our budget will address that. That's why we'll be talking about recovery, but we will have the resources and we will not be raising taxes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.